think we make a great team pulling together to help the people of Inishowen who are looking for work. We help them with their CVs, and Mary's going to talk to you about all that. But we also work with the employers, and we're well connected and with the Inishowen businesses. So we're delighted to be able to help with recruitment for vacancies that are available in Inishowen. So with that said, thank you, Anna, for inviting us along here today, and you've done a fantastic job organising the 12 days as well for Christmas, so well done to you on that. But just a wee bit of housekeeping from our point before I hand you over to Mary. If you wouldn't mind keeping your microphone on mute, before or during the presentation, so that just to avoid any feedback coming in through the sound. And then when Mary's finished her presentation, I would invite you to unmute your microphone, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask any, and there's no such thing as a silly question. And then if you would prefer, you can pop your question into the chat box, and myself or Anna would be happy to ask the question on your behalf. Just to say that this series is being recorded, just to make you aware of that. And with that said, I will hand you over to Mary to begin her presentation. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisling. And I'd like to welcome all of you here today, and thank you for giving up your time. And I know a lot of the people here, and I really appreciate your attendance here today. And I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Job Club and how it actually operates. The Job Club is one of the services of Inishowen Development Partnership, and it is funded through the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection. The idea behind the Job Club is to help job seekers realise their career plans and enable them to explore and enter employment. We've a very dedicated team here. You've already met Aisling, one of our hardest workers, and we also have Marie Wilson, who's on the team, and this year we've actually got a lot of support from Maureen as well, so I'd like to acknowledge that from Maureen and to thank you for that. Today what I want to do is I want to do two things really. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the Job Club program, how it's structured, how we help job seekers, and how we help employers. And I'm going to do that with the help of a slide presentation. And then what I want to do is just give you an overview of how the program operates, so you get some insight into exactly how we help job seekers. So now I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, so within the Job Club, very much the emphasis is on support and on help in enabling people to move towards their goals, to move towards their concept of success. Our objective really is to help job seekers to obtain employment, and as well as that, we link with potential employers to meet their staff requirements. We can help job seekers along all of their job search path, or part of their job search path. So we can move from the point where you're planning the campaign through to finding jobs, preparing your applications, right through to the job offer. Within the Job Club, we work to achieve the best possible outcome for our clients. For a lot of people, this is employment, but for others, it might be training or it might be community employment. Within the Job Club, we try to create an atmosphere which is very supportive, an atmosphere which is very encouraging, which is very empowering, and which is friendly. There are two main ways we help the job seeker. First of all, we offer one-to-one appointments. So, for example, a person can contact us, and the appointment is usually about an hour, and it focuses on one aspect of job search. So they may want a CV design because they're applying for a position. They may want help with an application, a letter, or an application form, or indeed they might want help in preparing for a forthcoming interview. For all of our clients, when an employer contacts us, we will contact clients who are likely to have the skills and interests for the position on offer. As well as the one-to-one assessments, we also have our formal workshops or group training. These workshops tend to take place in the morning, and we can have short programs which are about 1 week long, or longer programs which are up to 3 weeks long. Traditionally, the programs have taken place in our main office in Buncrana, and also in outreach we go to the Colgan Hall in Carndonagh, Serenity House in Moville, and we also deliver programs in Muff. Again, we cover all aspects of job seeking, so ensuring that every job seeker has a good, well-designed CV that highlights their skills, that they understand how to compose and draft letters and to approach application forms, that they're prepared for the various types of interviews they might face. And also within our program, there is a possibility for all job seekers to actively look and secure employment. Once the program is over, we still work with the job seeker, providing an aftercare support until they actually find their job offer. And again, as for all job seekers, when an employer comes to us with a vacancy, we notify candidates who are likely to be interested. We also work, as Aisling said, very closely with the employer. And for that reason, we've a good knowledge of the local recruitment market. For the employer, we offer a free recruitment and placement service. So their job vacancies can be advertised on the Job Club Facebook page, Job Centre Inishowen, and on IDP's website. We can also signpost or make employers aware of the various financial supports that are there for employers and employees, such as Job Plus, such as the YES program, such as Working Family Payment, and so on. Finally, in this slide, just a thought. When we actually started off, we mentioned the fact that we're helping people to move towards their definition of success. And when we look at success, people tend to think of success as being a little like the picture on the left. In other words, you apply yourself and you achieve success. But success is really more like the picture on the right. And certainly for job seekers in Inishowen, it's more like the picture on the right. So there's times you feel that you're moving 2 steps forward, 1 step back. For example, there may be a position advertised, you apply, you're not called to interview. The next week, another position is advertised, you apply. This time you're called to interview, you're delighted, you're not offered the job. Thirdly, on a third occasion, you apply again for a position. This time you are offered the interview and you are offered the job. So it takes a lot of persistence and it takes a lot of determination. Job seekers will find at times they're moving forward and at times they feel they're being pushed back. But what I can assure you is this: with that determination and persistence, job seekers will succeed in securing employment. Now, I hope that's given you an opportunity just to see how we can help job seekers and how we can also help employers. And what I want to do now is just give you a flavour or an overview of the program itself. And I suppose when you're starting off to look for a job, the first step really is to plan and organize your campaign. So I want to very briefly just give you a presentation on that. Okay, so in organizing your job search, the first thing really is to ensure that it fits into the demands of your life. You're trying to ensure that you're searching sufficient that you will get a return for your efforts, but not so much that you'll end exhausted. Now we'll just take a look at this particular slide. So here it says, say hello to the person who is in charge of your job search. You're in charge of your job search. All of us are in charge of our job search, and it's really up to the Job Club just to assist with that. So when you're beginning your search, there's a number of questions you really need to ask. You really need to ask, do you know what jobs interest you? Do you know where the jobs can be found? Do you know why you should be offered that job? And do you know how to self-care during job search? And we're now just going to address those questions briefly. So in determining what jobs interest you, a good job is one which combines your interests and your skills. Some people coming onto the Job Club know exactly what they want to do, so they can proceed. Others are less certain, so in this case, we can take time to determine your interests and identify your skills. The next step really is, how can jobs be found? And I suppose the 2 main ways are through the advertised market or through networking. Today, if we're looking at advertised jobs, they tend to occur online or they tend to occur digitally. For example, recruitment websites, companies' own websites, and of course Facebook pages. Within the Job Club, we help job seekers to identify those sites which are most relevant for job seekers in Inishowen, And we also help job seekers to identify the sites which are most relevant for them given their career interests. And of course, as well as the online advertising, we have the more traditional advertising, the newspapers. So we give access to all of the newspapers, and we post the vacancies on our Facebook page and our website. In addition to the advertised marketing, there is networking, and networking is incredibly important because more than 60% of jobs are never advertised. Yet networking has a slightly negative connotation. People will think of it as cold calling, as being a bit corporate. But network is not this at all. Network, which is about making contact with people, is actually very sociable. It is about being curious about people because they in turn will become curious about you. And within the Job Club, we can help people identify ways that they can network which is both effective and comfortable for them. Now, thirdly, why should you be offered the job? The focus is moving on to you, and you really want to know what you want and what you can offer the employer. It's important as well that you think, what are your long-term plans and your short-term plans? By doing this reflection, not only does it help you to organize your job search, but it also helps you when you're preparing your applications for jobs and also when you're preparing answers to possible interview questions. Fourthly, self-care is very important during an interview, and being organized is part of your self-care. So it's important that you have a definite goal and a definite time frame. For example, I want a job in childcare and I'd like to start work by next September. It's also important that you have a daily or weekly schedule where you give yourself some measurable goals. For example, I'm going to send out 6 applications each week or each day even, and I'm going to do some interview practice, and I'm going to talk to employers. Make sure you keep records of all your applications, and also make sure that and of conversations you have with employers. But what's also very important is that you take time to look after yourself. You take time to relax, you take time to go for a walk, and at the end of the day or at the end of the week, review your progress. What have you done? What have you achieved? Is there anything differently that you could do next time? Finally, when we look at this slide, we can see that here there are lots and lots of no's. But to be perfectly honest with you, it really doesn't matter how many no's there are. What matters is that there's a yes. And what matters is that that yes is the right yes for you. I suppose now that we've looked at how we organize the job search, within the Job Club, the next thing that we would be doing really is working with the CVs and making sure everyone had a good, well-designed CV, making sure that everyone knew how to apply for jobs through letter or through application form. And of course, we look at the interviews as well. And today we have 2 basic types of interviews. We've the traditional interviews, tell me about yourself, why would you like this job? And then we've the competency-based interview. And the competency-based interview is where employers look at the skills and attributes of the job and then ask people to give an example of when they've used that particular competency. So for example, you may be asked, give an example of a time you've worked as part of a team, or give an example of a time you've had to organize a project, because of course teamwork and organization are competencies that tend to occur in a lot of jobs. And within our Job Club program, we tell people how to tackle those interview questions. But today what I want to do, and this is my final screen share, I just very quickly want to look at how we approach the more traditional interviews. So there are certain interviews that occur in virtually every interview that you face, and then there are questions that will tend to be related to the particular sector for which you're applying. So questions that tend to come up all the time are, tell me about yourself. Why have you applied for this job? Why should we offer you this position? Where do you see yourself in 3 or in 5 years' time? And 2 questions that are very popular in Inishowen. What is your greatest strength? And of course, if you're asked this question, the next question will be, what is your greatest weakness? And then, of course, When we look at the industry related questions, for example, if you're going for a position in retail sales, you're going to be asked a question of customer care or customer support. If you're going for a job where you're working with older people, you'll be asked questions on maintaining the dignity of the older person. If you're going for a position in childcare, then questions on confidentiality tend to be very popular. And of course, at the end of any interview, it's important that you have your own questions prepared. When we're looking at the typical interview, we look at it from the point of view of the interviewer, and we ask, why is the interviewer asking that question? Who is the ideal person? So for example, if the interviewer asks, why have you applied for this position? He or she may be curious to find out, are you interested in the job? Are you interested in the company? Are you interested in both? Or is your interest more self-serving? So for example, if you're asked the question, why have you applied for this position? And you say, well, I like being busy and the work here is very varied. That perhaps is a better answer than saying I've applied for this position because it's very handy, I just live across the road. We also give all of our people a chance to look at how to approach interview questions and how to answer interview questions, and also to look at lots of sample interview questions and interview answers actually to get an idea. And then of course it's your turn. All job seekers using our service have the opportunity to come up with their own answers to questions they are likely to be faced in the interview situation. This occurs both in our Job Club workshops, and it also occurs when we're helping people one-to-one. Now, the final thing I'd like to say about Job Clubs before we have any questions is that it's very much an interactive process. We do the presentations, I do the talks now through Zoom, but very much I'm encouraging interaction from everybody all the time. So people are asking questions about how the service works or and how the program, they're contributing their ideas, they're sharing ideas, and this whole notion of the contribution from the participant is just as important as the contribution from the speaker. As well as that, when we're working in group situations, we get the larger group and we break it into smaller groups where people can discuss topics, and people enjoy this because they're working on a particular topic, but they also enjoy the fact that it's given them an opportunity to interact and relate to everybody else. The Job Club is very much a vibrant service. It's a very busy service, and we look forward to that vibrancy and that busyness continuing. We welcome very much when employers come to us and tell us about their vacancies and where we can help them to find staff. We also very much welcome the job seekers coming and using our service and helping them with that particular service. Next year, I think we're always looking at growing and developing, and we're working with local employers, helping them to find local jobs. But I think maybe one of the things that this year has told us is that maybe people are also looking at jobs where they can work remotely, where they can work at home. So I'd like to think that in the future we will be helping people to find jobs for local employers, but maybe we'll also be helping people to find jobs for global employers. So thank you very much for listening to that presentation, and certainly now I would very much welcome any questions you might have.
Hi, Mary. I have a question.
Hi.
I find myself being an interviewer quite a lot. So how do I bring out the best on the interviewee?
How do you bring? Well, I suppose part of bringing out the best is making sure that people feel comfortable. So I think that's important, and that people will talk more. I think sometimes even if you bring out a positive question, there's a new question that is, well, it's been asked more frequently now, and it's give an example of an achievement of which you're proud. And I think that's always a good question, because it's making people focus on the positive, and it's putting people in a good frame of mind. So I think that's a good question to ask. I also think it's important that you are very supportive of the person when they're there. So when they're answering questions, you're sort of smiling and you're nodding. So you're being very, very encouraging of that particular person. So I suppose really it's been polite, courteous, supporting that person, making it pleasant for that person, because that's what will bring out the best in them. Thank you, Pauline.
Because I do find we ask the question a lot, you know, your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses. And I think maybe mostly for Irish people, they find those questions very, especially strengths, very difficult to answer, you know. But that's what I find.
Well, I agree with you, Pauline, because people do find what's your greatest strength difficult, because then they feel they don't want to be bragging. So they find that quite difficult. And yet those are very popular questions that tend to be asked most of the time. And they also find the weakness one, they find that quite difficult as well. And sometimes I've had people and they said, you can't believe the question I've been asked. They actually asked me what are my weaknesses. So sometimes people who are unfamiliar are just simply they're simply surprised about that. So I suppose really what people need to do is maybe look a little bit more at the questions they're going to be asked, because you're asking questions there that are very usual questions and very popular questions, and the candidate really should have had an opportunity, I suppose, to think about that and think about an answer.
Right. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, so everybody else is...
Mary, can I just say something? I was shocked when you said that only 60% of jobs were advertised.
Yes.
That's very scary.
Yeah, that's statistic. And the amazing thing about that statistic, it not only applies here in Inishowen or in Donegal, but it applies throughout Ireland and it applies throughout the world. So if you're looking at it's not a local phenomenon, it's actually a global phenomenon. And it not only is the case now, but it's the case in the past and in the future. But sometimes when you think of it, if you look at the number of jobs that you see advertised and you look at people going in and finding jobs, you find that in actual fact, yeah, there are lots of jobs that are not advertised, and that's because jobs happen in all sorts of other ways. So, for example, somebody might have sent in a CV to an employer, so the employer says, okay, let's look through the CVs we've got here before I actually go and recruit, or before I actually go and advertise. Or employers will try to find out, okay, I've got a position opening here, maybe I'll talk to some of my staff, they may know somebody else who can take up that role. So the one thing about that is, because networking, I suppose, because the unadvertised market is so important, if the job seeker is just relying on things that are advertised, then they're actually missing out on a lot. So I suppose doing things where they're actually deciding, okay, not only am I going to respond to what's advertised, I'm going to maybe apply what's called speculatively. In other words, send out applications for positions which aren't advertised. So if I were going for a job in retail sales and I would like a position in Buncrana, maybe I'll send off a letter to all of the shops in Buncrana, and maybe I will add something like, you know, just retain my details on file in case a suitable position comes up. So the emphasis is really, I suppose, look at other ways you can apply for jobs and not just rely on the important as it is, not just rely solely on the advertised market. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Do you think, Mary, that it's come full circle, you know, where everything was supposed to be advertised and there was going to be that formal process for all positions, with, you know, the onset of networking and you know, opening up our networks, that it's kind of come full circle again, so people are more inclined to reach out to companies that they know they would like to work in, or somebody who works there that they would like to say to them, I'm available, you know. It was kind of just for the headhunters, but now it's kind of more generic.
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting question you're asking, Anna, because I was at a presentation last week, and they were talking about, it was Grow Remote, and they were talking about working remotely from home, and they were actually making the point that some companies now have, I think it was called a talent pool or a talent whatever. In other words, what they're doing is they actually encourage people to submit applications even though they don't have any, and these are large companies, they don't have any vacancies at the moment, because what actually happens is they're looking at people expressing an interest in their company, so that then when they do the formal applications, they will see, has anybody come beforehand and has anybody actually expressed an interest. When we're looking at things like the speculative, I just mentioned, I'm just going to go back and make one point in relation to what Maureen has asked. When we're looking at the fact that 60% of jobs are never advertised, to a very large extent, we're looking at positions where it's sole traders or small companies or family businesses, you know, who look for jobs in all sorts of other ways. If you're looking at organisations like the ETB or Donegal County Council, or the Departments of Social Protection or the Civil Service or whatever, of course, all of those positions are actually advertised. and they will do it. But the interesting thing is, even with some companies who might be using an advertised method of doing it, in some cases, if people have speculatively applied, they're still taking note of that as well, because you are showing an interest.
They want to see it coming. And, you know, as should we, you know, if we were thinking about, you know, your career or what you're going to do next, should you kind of list your top 10 companies that you'd like to work for and maybe just target and keep an eye on what they're offering? Or does that make, you know, worth doing?
Absolutely. Yes, of course it's a good idea, and it's a good idea to, yes, of course it's a good idea to look at that and know what, and to focus on what they're doing and to note their progress, because obviously if the vacancy is coming up, you want to make that application, and you also want to be saying, look, I know what's happening, or I'm interested in your company because. So when you're looking at answering interview questions like, why have you applied to this company? You need to know a little bit about them. You need to have done your research, and the research is actually fundamental, so that they can see that, yes, that your interest is actually matching what they have on offer. So doing the research, knowing what they're doing, following those companies is paramount. It's absolutely fundamental. Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah. I know that you yourself and Ashley helped us a lot with the SkillNet under the Skills Connect program for the brand ambassador and SOSTEC and the CIPD. You know, what else can we be doing? You know, reaching out even to other organisations in Inishowen to say, right, these are the possible opportunities, and that, you know, it was really great that a lot of companies helped us with work placements and things like that to give people confidence for jobs. But how do we follow up with those kind of people, like, you know what I mean, to make sure that, you know, what training they've done is actually of use to them in the future?
Okay, all right. I suppose, Anna, that's really, I would imagine, and Ashling, if you have anything to contribute, you know, you want to say, just please do so. But and what I would imagine is that it's just about maintaining contact with the employers. So in other words, they have come and they've used the service and they've made contact with you, and it's keeping that contact alive. So it's maybe thanking them for their contributions and the way they've done it, and obviously if there's new developments, just keeping them aware of that. So it really is, it's really all about building the networks, isn't it? Because we talk so much about that, and it's building the relationships and making sure that when those relationships are built, that they're still actually maintained. And people appreciate that. People like the fact that you're still keeping them in the loop, that you're still notifying them and you're still making them aware.
And we found as well, you know, with employers that we would have worked with in the past with regards to recruitment, you know, when there is government incentives or when there's any announcements made, they will come back to us just to check on the detail, or maybe for us to link them in with the department staff in the local office here in Buncrana. And we would work closely with the ETB as well, I suppose, keeping in contact with the adult guidance service there, and then the community courses that are run throughout Inishowen. So as Mary said, I think it's just embracing and encouraging that relationship that we've made with the employers. So it works well.
I have one question here on email from a guy, Keith, who couldn't make it in, and he's asking about LinkedIn. You know, how important is your CV and your LinkedIn profile, you know, matching?
It's important that it actually is, and LinkedIn is actually becoming more important, I suppose, as a way of job seeking. And again, Anna, when you were making the point there about following particular companies, one of the best ways, the most effective ways you can do that is through the medium of LinkedIn. And yeah, I think LinkedIn is important, and and it's becoming more important depending on the area. And we've even had people in our job club who have actually got positions through LinkedIn, and that's because they've had a particular interest. They've maintained contact with companies who share their particular interest, and they contributed towards that. And then what's actually happened is, when a vacancy came up, someone within the company approached them and says, look, this particular position is available, would you like to apply? And yes, of course, he was delighted to apply because it was what he was interested in. And it was a position which was based in Dublin, and he actually is working up there. And I've met him a couple of times since, and it's all worked out very well. So again, when I mentioned the fact that we are the different ways of job seeking, of course, LinkedIn is important, and it is something that is becoming more important.
Right. Keith will get the copy of this to see, so he'll hear your answer. Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions from any of our...
Yeah, hi. I have a question. As an aging female, You sort of feel that older older people not necessarily welcome in the workplace, or less welcome. So what would you do to combat that sort of unconscious ageism if you're going for an interview or going for a job?
Okay, it depends, I suppose, in the particular sector you're in. So there's certain sectors where it is more difficult. So if you're, for example, in the IT sector, that can be a difficult sector to be in, where if you're going into caring or other areas, if you're, it depends on that. But I think what's actually important, and what I have found in my experience, is that a lot of people feel that that they're older, so they're not going to be offered the position. But yet, and Aisling will agree with that we know within the job club itself, very often older people will be offered positions ahead of younger people. And the reason that they're actually offered those positions, because they actually have the skills for the particular job. So I think what's important is not to set up a barrier, because that's a barrier there, and look at it the positive side. Look very much at what you can offer the employer, what you've done in the past. Look at your work history, your work experience, and realize the value of all of that, and then very much focus on what are the employer needs. So doing your research, finding out about the position, maybe looking at the direction the company is going to move into, so that if you can get a chance to engage within the employer, you can sort of align your interests with what the employer, their focus and where they're going. And of course, it has to be genuine as well. Your interest actually has to match what their focus is. But I think if you're focusing on your experience, if you're trying to look at what you can give to the employer and to set up that conversation, I think that works well for you. And I think your experience will stand to you, completely. Thank you for
And
the
great,
question.
as you say, don't set up your barriers before you even start.
No, don't, because all of us do have barriers, and people can think, certainly I can think of that barrier because I'm certainly getting older, and you can think, okay, my age is going to be a big barrier, and possibly it is. But the thing about it is, I also have to be positive, and I have to look at my experience. I have to look at where I want to go, and then I have to talk to employers, because you can become very enthusiastic if you can get an opportunity to get a conversation with that employer even before the interview, and you're talking and you are interested in what he is offering, then that enthusiasm can carry you through.
Great, thank you.
Nuala. Hi, Nuala.
Can hear you.
I can.
Nila, you're on mute, I think.
No, it's not. No, it's just not coming through.
Oh.
Do you want to type your question very quickly into the chat, Nuala? Might. The pleasures of technology, isn't
it? Can it not type for you? One of the things I want to say about Nuala is, because Nuala, you're there in Colgan Hall, and when we're delivering our programme in the outreach centres, Colgan Hall in Carndonagh is one of the places where we go, and the welcome there has always been very warm, and all the staff who are there at present and who were there in the past are extremely warm and welcoming people.
I'm just going to say there to type in here. Oh, she's taken away, so we get that question.
Okay. Are there
it's so funny, because like this year has shown us so many changes, and so many people who have always felt that their job is secure, should it be hospitality or tourism, and their world has been turned on end, and it's how do we making sure that they get their confidence back. That's I think that's the big challenge right across the board for us all in 2021, is making sure that people are get their mojo back.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I know, Aisling, that you help a lot with that, and helping people develop and plan ahead and so on. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that, because what's actually happening, as you said, there's certain sectors there, and you thought they would have felt they would never have been impacted, and you certainly, and I would have felt that they'd never been impacted. So certainly, I think the rug has been pulled under the feet of a lot of people. And I suppose all of us can never take for granted. There is no And I think, to be honest, I think I said this to somebody once. I think the only secure position out there is funeral director, because that's never going to change, unless too many people set up in competition. And of course, there's always that as well. But yes, we really need to rethink. And I think trying to get that confidence is hard. I know that actually, interesting enough, that when we do our Job Club program, one of the things that at the end of our program, we ask people to fill in an evaluation form, and confidence is one of the things that through the program people tend to gain. And I think a lot of confidence is, you certainly feel that you're thrown, that there's nothing there. But when you sit down and start to plan, you realize, okay, just let me take a look at the opportunities. There might be other opportunities there, and maybe I need to get the structures right. Let me look at my CV, let me reflect on what I've done, look at what I've done in the past, appreciate what I've done in the past, and maybe then I can focus on opportunities within the future. So I think it's a case of being really, you are going to feel thrown, but it's a case of, again, getting yourself organized, looking at what you've done, looking at what you've achieved, looking at what could be the possibilities. And also, we've talked about networking. It could also be about even talking to other people, going and talking to employers, saying, look, this is what I've done in the past. Are these directions I could go into in the future? It could also, Aisling has mentioned things like the adult services, like the adult guidance service. So it could even be going and talking to them and seeing, are there other opportunities for you? Are there different ways you can redirect? And I know, for example, that the government has got they reckon that about up to maybe 400,000 positions may be gone through the pandemic, and they want to just bring back those positions. So there's going to be a huge emphasis on things like training and re-education, maybe new sectors like retrofitting, the green economy. So it's looking at, are there training programs you could go into? Are there directions you could go into? So it's maybe focusing on the changes and realizing that there are changes there, but we can all move, that there is a possibility of moving and making those changes. And then there are organizations that can help you and support you along the way.
Okay. There's messages on here, so I'll just read it out from her. So she just wanted to say what an excellent service the Job Club offers.
Thank you.
I have used it personally and made the world of difference during a very difficult process. Confidence became an issue for me, and working with the Job Club helped me to regain that. So a massive thank you to Mary and Aisling. So that's
Nuala,
somebody who's been there and done it with you.
Thank you so much, and that's so kind of you to say. And it was actually a pleasure working with you. But I'll also say that you put an awful lot of effort into it as well. We were just there to support you because you were taking a lot of responsibility and doing it. And I was so pleased then when you moved to the outcome you want to achieve, and that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, and you've done some amazing work since you've got to the Colgan Hall, I have to say.
Absolutely.
But that's brilliant to know. So, have we any other questions, or we can let you go and grab your coffee now? Is anybody any other questions they wanted to add? Okay. So, ladies, thank you so much.
Yes.
Really, really appreciate your time.
Yes.
And as I say, on the Inishowen and SkillNet website, we'll have all the videos up from the whole 12 days for everybody to go back over. They'll not be just live to everybody. You'll have to register your details, and we'll have your emails there, so they will match up and you'll get access to. But anything at all ever under the roof at IDP. I know when I came there just over a year ago, I was stunned at the amount of work that goes onto that roof, and I know we're all spread under different roofs at the minute, but the work that's done is totally amazing, and for the people of Inishowen. So it's just great to have all of the connections together. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you on maybe some more sessions. Mary McKenna told us the other day, if on her nuggets in her interview, she says, be kind. So I'll just leave that one for everybody.
And I just want to thank everybody again for coming here, and I'm very pleased I had the opportunity, and I would like to thank you all for giving up your time.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Aisling.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Okay.
And you too. Yes. Should have had some Christmas music. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, thanks very much. See you all later.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.